Today, we need to talk about the tragic death of Kevin Silvaganesh, a young man in Tamil Nadu. We're going to break down an investigative report that looks at not just the crime itself, but the whole complex web of caste, politics, and the really urgent calls for justice that have followed. Let's get into it.
Now, before we dive into Kevin's personal story, you have to understand the context, and it starts with this number, 65. According to activists cited in the source, that's how many so-called honor killings have happened in Tamil Nadu just since 2017. So you see, Kevin's death wasn't some random, isolated incident. It's part of a much, much bigger and deeply disturbing pattern.
So, with that staggering number in mind, let's bring this back to the person at the very heart of this report. This is the story of Kevin, and how his incredibly promising life was just brutally cut short.
So, who was Kevin? Well, he was only 26. He was a software engineer at a top company, a university gold medalist, making a great salary. I mean, by any measure, this guy was a huge success story. He was from a Dalit community, and he was in a serious, long-term relationship with a woman from a dominant caste. And here's the heartbreaking part. The report argues that despite everything he had achieved, none of it mattered. In the end, it was his caste that allegedly marked him for death.
So here's how that awful day unfolded. Kevin was at the hospital with his sick grandfather. His partner's brother, Surjith, showed up. He apparently told Kevin that his parents wanted to talk things over and convinced Kevin to get on his motorbike. But it was a lie. It was a trap. He was driven to a secluded area, viciously attacked with a sickle, and he died right there at the scene. The murder itself was just horrific. But the story doesn't end there. According to the source, what happened next was this calculated, deliberate effort to control the entire narrative, and that's what sparked this intense fight for the truth. Almost immediately, two completely different stories started to form. On one hand, you had the reality of who Kevin was, a successful young professional who was in a loving relationship. But on the other hand, you had what's described as a smear campaign. The source claims a pro-government newspaper even published a totally false story saying his partner denied their relationship. His character was attacked online. And activists alleged the goal was simple: to shift the entire conversation away from a caste-based honor killing and try to make it all about Kevin's personal life. And it gets even darker. The report claims that some caste-based groups on social media weren't just defending the killer, they were celebrating him. This quote from the source is just chilling. It says they were portraying Surjit as a hero who had, get this, come to save their caste.
So this is where the report really zooms out. It argues that this goes way beyond the actions of just one family. It puts the whole system, the police, the political establishment, right under the microscope, raising some really serious questions.
Let's break down the specific allegations against the police here. The killer's father is a police sub-inspector, a cop. Now, the source claims that even though both parents were named in the initial police report, their arrests were delayed. The father was only taken in after 5 full days of public protests. And the mother? The report says she hasn't been arrested at all. This kind of alleged inaction is what's fueling these accusations of a deep, systemic bias. And then there's this. Talk about a jarring contrast. As a family is grieving this brutal caste-motivated murder, the Speaker of the Tamil Nadu Assembly makes a public statement. And what does he say? He claims that caste problems do not exist in the region. According to the report, this kind of official denial, right in the face of such violence, is a huge part of the problem. So how does something like this even happen? Well, the investigation argues that this killing was born out of a wider ecosystem of hate. It alleges that dominant caste organizations are being infiltrated by right-wing groups like the RSS, a well-known Hindu nationalist organization, specifically to stir up social division. The alleged goal is to create an environment where this kind of violence becomes not just possible, but is seen as acceptable. And if you want to see just how political this allegedly gets, just listen to this quote. The report says that the son of a major politician got up at a rally and said this. This statement, well, it wasn't seen as a call for peace. It was widely interpreted as a direct incitement to more violence. Okay, so in response to all this tragedy and outrage, the conversation has really shifted. People are asking, what do we do now? And for many, the answer is a powerful demand for real, systemic, legal change. And this is where it gets really frustrating for activists. They point to what they call a massive political flip-flop. See, when he was in the opposition, the current chief minister, M.K. Stalin, actually promised a special law to prevent honor killings. But now that he's in power, his government is saying the existing laws are good enough. It's a total reversal, and it has drawn a ton of criticism. So, what would this special law actually look like? Well, the people pushing for it have some very specific ideas. First, they want to be able to seize the assets of the perpetrators' families. Second, give those assets to the victims' families as compensation. And third, they want to prosecute people for hate speech that encourages this violence. And maybe most importantly, they want to ban the caste-based organizations that are accused of stirring it all up. So why do they need a new law? Why aren't the current ones working? Well, the whole argument really comes down to this one single damning statistic. According to the activist Evidence Kathir, in the last 30 years, only 7 honor-killing cases have actually resulted in a conviction at the district court level. And even some of those get overturned later. For proponents of the new law, this is absolute proof that the current system just doesn't have the teeth to get the job done. At the end of the day, the case of Cavan Silva-Ganesh, as this report lays it all out, isn't just about one murder. It's about a system where the lines between the protector and the perpetrator have allegedly become dangerously blurred. And it leaves us all with a very difficult but absolutely essential question. When the very people who are meant to enforce the law are themselves implicated in the crime, what path to justice is even left? Thanks for joining me for this breakdown.